Hey everybody, welcome back. Good to see you again, so to speak. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Hopefully you're all having good days, relatively good days. Um, this is 17 and some change. I'm EQDES17, here to bring you my 2 cents. Um, So today's episode is going to be probably the most political episode that I've recorded up to this point, um, just because I have um, things coming at me from um, multiple angles from two of the most pertinent uh, parts of my life. I have politics being thrown in my lap uh, in school, um, and and in the workplace. So I'm gonna discuss a little bit a couple of those things with you here today, and I figured um, might as well just speak on um, kind of political and social political topics throughout the entirety of the episode because um, it was really big news last week when Trump kind of, or I should say, when Musk went nuclear on Trump. Um, that was really headline catching, and it is something that I kind of expected all along. Like I expected them to have some sort of rift, some sort of falling out. Um, that's I I you know typically people would say, oh, two big personalities, but I didn't really know much about Musk's personality. Um, I kind of took him for his word, and I still kind of do. Um, but I've learned a little bit more about him since his whole relationship with Trump. Um, I kind of expected it um, from Trump's part. To be honest with you, I thought Trump is the type of individual that can tire a person out pretty quickly if they're spending an excessive amount of time around them. Um, but that was kind of more of a subjective opinion. Um, yeah, I kind of predicted the fallout, um, but I didn't think it would go down like this. I didn't think it would be, you know, Musk uh, tweeting out hyperbolic, just like really damning and just type of shit that you don't say if unless you have unless you have like war against a person on your mind, then you don't really say things um like he said. I I like the term now. They use the term scorched earth. Like he went scorched earth in some of these tweets, and it was really wild. And I think Trump played his cards right by not really feeding into it, saying, "Oh, this guy seems to have some problems," or "I hope he's okay," or whatever the case is. Um, like he's not really feeding into the animosity too much. I think Musk probably had legitimate reasons to be upset with the administration and things of that nature. People point to, he's, and again, I tend to believe him in the things he says. I think he's, um, a very eccentric character. I think his autism doesn't really get considered enough when we're talking about him as a personality. Um, but yeah, he doesn't like the big beautiful bill fully. He thinks that it undoes some of the work that he put in to get us closer towards a balanced budget. Um, and I don't know. I mean, on one hand, you could say a big bill that covers everything is like a dope, a solid move. But on the other hand, it almost seems lazy. Um, I'm sure I haven't read the bill. I mean, I'm sure there are provisions in there that you know, don't need to be in there. Um, so he didn't like that, and there were a couple of appointees apparently that were um, chosen in lieu of his picks. I know the the one that might hit the hardest was um, the pick for NASA. Musk had a guy in mind for that pick, and the administration went in a different direction. You know, um, I don't know. I don't really think it had anything to that had much to do with the EV mandate. I have heard Musk in the past um, claim to not. I think his quote was, "Take it off, take it away." Um, I don't know how much that angered him, like Trump claims. Um, Now, as far as like the tweet that was heard like around the world, um, I mean, it seems like I have little to no doubt that Trump is um in the files. I think he's mentioned in the files, and we've all seen pictures of Trump with Epstein in social events. Um, they may have had Epstein may have had business in Mar-a-Lago. I'm not sure if I'm um, remembering correctly, but I don't. It's not. It's not the Epstein files that are prevalent or important. It's the client list. That's what's important. Like we want to see the client list. Like who were these people peddling to, right? Who were the customers, basically? And so that's a whole different story. And I would hope Trump's not on that list. Um, like I remember when I was doing research on like the Illuminati, there was, a lot of people, Democrats and celebrities that were, you know, tied up with that name who were like accused of being like in the whole Epstein shit, like with the pepperoni pizzas and shit like that. I mean, you remember Pizzagate with Hillary talking about how like she had a whole freaking operation underneath the pizza shop. Um, so like I don't. So those are two different things. I don't think he's on the client list or whatnot. But that's just wild for Elon to just to be saying shit like that. Like, dog, you were just wearing these people's hat like a month ago. Like you're wearing like that's like when that's like when somebody on a sports team turns around and like starts like bashing like the whole the culture of the team or yeah or something like that, like the mascot or some shit like that. You know, I don't know. I thought that was excessive and stuff like that. Um, he seems to be kind of walking. I mean, walking back. Yeah, I mean, he's deleted the tweet since then, and he said some like favorable, um, terms of agreement. Like he said, yeah, I agree to a post that said something about they shouldn't be beefing. Um, seems to be walking it back. I don't think they're enemies, Trump and Musk at this point. But I think that was just stupid. Like that was just for such a smart individual. Like he does some really stupid social things sometimes, and that's just what it is. You know, he has no filter, and he feels like he doesn't. I don't know if he feels like he doesn't need a filter, because of his power. He's like, um, maybe. So, yeah, yeah. Just give me 1 second here. Um, so my school just recently, they just recently posted a question. It said, I think one of the biggest problems um that has faced research in psychology is that most of the research has been done on um was it straight white middle class educated men, and then they wanted us to kind of give our opinions on that and talk about like the impact on cultures and individuals within different races and things of that nature. um and so I just responded with, you know, um, historically speaking, those are the type of people that had access to higher education. Um, but now, for the past however many years, um, the field of psychology in particular has been, you know, leaning towards the female, and that it has been more diverse in general as well, and that should um, translate into more diverse research and also international research exists and continues and will continue to exist. People like to study those who are like themselves. So maybe international research will also contribute to the diversity in research in that field. And I also mentioned that it behooves us as a species to study, all races and genders and sexualities and professions and heights, and like it behooves us to study as much of the species as we can and cross reference and things of that nature. And I'm sure, we would be pleasantly surprised with the um, amount of similarities that we share. Right? Um, my so that's kind of one side that I'm getting the that's one side that I'm getting the I'm gonna need to pause this and grab my phone in a second. That's one side that I'm getting the politics on. It's also a or coming into play. Oh, that's it's also coming into play at my workplace. Um, so they're requiring a gender affirming care, live, couple hour training, 2 hour training. And I'm gonna go there and I'm gonna see kind of what they have to say. They say, gender, we're not, what was it? Um, we don't just understand it, we don't just accept it, we affirm it. So whatever it is, like if they're saying I'm a he, I'm a she, we affirm their belief. We tell them like, yeah, you're a he, you're a she. And I don't I have left places of employment in the past over things that I did not agree with. So, for example, I quit an assistant manager role at a local store in the community because they were insisting that I wear a mask, and they continued to insist that I wear a mask. And I didn't want to contribute to the optics for my community of not seeing anybody's face. Like I thought it was a depressing optic and I didn't want to contribute to that. And I thought I had other thoughts as well at the time. Um, but like in this case, I mean, I have a really um, decent setup where I am. Um, I don't think it's worth losing my job over attending the training. Um, and then we're gonna have to demonstrate that we learned what we were supposed to learn at the end of the training or whatever. And I don't think that on a societal level that you can expect people to affirm others' gender preferences. I don't think on a societal level you can do that. I don't think on an individual level, long term, it's best for the person either. With that being said, working in a professional setting, um, understanding that this is a sensitive issue with individuals, and knowing that I am not clinical in my capability, like I don't have um, any higher level education. I don't have a clinical degree. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a. So maybe it's okay for me to, and I'm gonna see what the training says and stuff like that. But maybe it is okay for me to, in my role as just a counselor, as just a day to day logistics guy that keeps that whose job it is to keep everybody from having a mental health crisis, like actively. Like my role is just to, keep everything smooth and stuff like that. So maybe it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world for me to affirm their gender until they can have those types of conversations with their actual therapists around gender dysphoria or whatever the case may be. Maybe on this large of a topic, it's not beneficial for me to bring in my thoughts on what, generally speaking, is best for society or long term, yada, 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 yada. You know what I mean? Maybe this is like a little bit above me. So I don't know. But with that being said, I'm gonna grab my phone real quick because I have some Q&As around like gender ideology and stuff like that that I kind of wanted to that I think would be a nice piece of protein for this episode. So hold up. All right, it looks like we're back. That was easier than I expected. Just a little pause button and then I press it again and we're right back. All right, cool. I could have done that before I unpaused, but anyways. Um so the first question it asked me in regards to gender um was, it says, what do people mean when they talk about gender ideology? I said I'm not entirely sure what people mean. Um, but as far as my understanding is concerned, um, it's all ideas that stem, it's all concepts and ideas that stem from the core belief that gender is a social construct. Um, they said, I'm just thinking if I have anything really to add to that. All concepts and ideas that stem from the core belief that gender is a social construct. I think that's a neat definition. Um, says, why is gender ideology such a hot topic today? Um, I said it's because the left intended it to be that way. It's a topic harped on continuously by the left and plays into the Marxist revolutionary ideology. Um, the focus on gender identity adds one more oppressed class to the list of combatants versus modernity. Then also we have the right um, of the political spectrum responding recently, since 2020. Now we start getting some pushback by the right, um, and I think that's why it's a hot topic. The left has wanted it to be a hot topic for a very long time, and now they got that, and now the right is responding. You know what I mean? Um, talk about social constructs, you know, constructed beef, socially constructed beefs. Um, how can we discuss gender ideology respectfully, even if we disagree? I say the same way we can discuss any topic that we disagree on respectfully, whether it be religion or some other political stance. It's about, you know, like approaching from a place of curiosity, approaching from a place of humility, approaching from a non-evangelical place where you're not really trying to convince people of your point of view. You're just trying to um, have an exchange of ideas. Um, but it comes down to the individual. Some people are better than others at civilized discourse in the face of emotional topics, right? Not everybody can discuss things that are close to their heart and keep that rational mind on. And it's not, their fault. It's not, I don't like flooring people for that. I don't like, oh, why you getting so emotional type shit. Um, Given I don't think people who do get that emotional should, they should watch out. They should try not to engage in those topics. But I don't like bashing people for, you know, having their emotional circuitry override their rational thinking on certain topics. It's like, yeah, that's what the F humans do. You know what I mean? Like if I take you people look, I just got a little bit worked up myself, trying to defend those who get over emotional. But if I took any one of the people who are, you know, bashing these individuals for not being able to have, uh, you know, rational thoughts, I you can rile up almost anybody. That's my point. Like anybody, almost anybody can get riled up. That's what it means to be humans, and some are more susceptible than others to that. And unless they're and we shouldn't make fun of them. I mean, we should give them, some space, some benefit of the doubt there. But at the same time, like I said, it is incumbent that these types of people, these types of individuals shouldn't put themselves, um, they make good activists. I mean, they make good activists. That's why they do it. The highly emotional type, the ones that will scream and cry and over a topic, yeah, they make the best activists, right? Um, but if we're talking about table talk, dinner talk, yeah, if you're the type that gets really super emotional, maybe try to avoid some stuff to an extent. What are some common misconceptions about gender ideology? I did not answer that question. Um, this was another stupid question. So I told Chat GPT to modify the questions a little bit. Um, and then it gave me a pretty decent one. It said, how do you see the relationship between gender and sexuality? Um, and I said that um, this is pretty much the crux of the issue, right? I think a lot of today's confusion stems from the separation of those two concepts. Um, saying biological sex is the body that you're born in, and gender identity is the characteristics or the spirit of being that defines your feelings. The main point of contention post separation of those concepts is once again nature versus nurture, which comes up far too frequently in the field of psych. How much uh, how much do chromosomes play a role in interest, personality, behavior, interpretation versus societal gender stereotypes that people get molded into, right? The left will say that um, gender identity is a social construct, and the right will say, uh, siding on the side of nurture, and the right will say that gender identity isn't is based on biological sex, right? The boys will like trucks. Um, and it's I think there's a middle ground. Not I think there's a middle ground in the nature versus nurture. I think that's obvious. I don't think it's one nor the other. I think boys are more predisposed to they're more predisposed to liking trucks in general, um, because of their biology. Um, and that can be true, but it can also be true that Westerners wear pants on their like West. It can also be true that Westerners don't have their guys dress in dresses, but that's not a biological thing, right? So you can find examples of both, right? Um, Men are typically higher in aggression, where and that one can get dicey. That could get dicey. Did they train for that? And it's like actually no, because like biologically, like they're built for anyways. Anyways, that's enough about gender. Um, I think we'll wrap it up. I'll talk briefly on the the riots, the LA immigration riots. Um, I know that's a hard pivot. That's a hard pivot, but sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. And so in California, they're having riots. Um, there's uh a lot of paid there's a lot of paid agitators, just like there were in 2020, but at the same time, anarchists lean left, right? You find the anarchists on the left side of the political spectrum more often than not. So anytime there's a anytime there's a riot to be had, anytime there's a protest going on that could turn into a riot, it's and you see the politician. It's just another example of ignoring and excusing violence, coddling criminals, and telling us not to believe our eyes. Um, it's just more anti-American, Marxist, socialist bullshit. You know, it's amazing the lengths that some would go to destroy. But I think I'm gonna leave off on those notes. I can feel my energy kind of shifting after a couple of those topics. So I think I'm gonna get up out of here. I'm gonna go outside. I'm gonna get some sunlight, and stuff like that. I might ride my bike. Um, but yeah. Um, thank you guys. Thank you guys for coming by, listening to me talk my shit, and I hope it helps your Wednesday not be so Wednesday-ish. And I will see y'all next time.